was 7.6. Now that's down 5.5.
Trying to talk about this for a second.
All right, I'm gonna let Jim Fenn into the room. Is that all right, Nancy? It's about 6:30, so.
Is he going to be at their meeting or setting a separate room in their meeting?
I'm assuming in a separate.
Nobody spoke here. So just keep your eyes open. Well, yeah, and I don't know if you're going to mix it.
Oh, jeez.
So
I remember that.
Evening there.
getting it. May I go up Thursday, maybe they'll send it.
How long has he been like that? Since a week ago.
Yeah,
I
no.
know somebody
Like
that's
you
had
told me that, yeah.
they've been a month and they still haven't.
He's going to the VA on Thursday.
Hi, Karen.
Hey, Terry.
Hi, Dave. John.
Morning.
Good to see you.
Big boy.
No, thank you.
Okay. Got an extra pen.
All I have is this one.
Yeah. Why would you come in a second?
Well, usually I do, but I don't.
I'm surprised at myself for forgetting. Should I pass these up? Should I pass these around?
They have them.
Well, select board members up, but then here is we. Other than you, John.
I'm becoming a fixture around here.
Okay. Bill Scott, maybe had other meetings? No, they don't speak to the devil.
Do we have to read this whole thing?
Are these other things here probably yours?
Even
Or you hand?
Yes,
You want those back?
I think so. I don't know what they are, but they, yes, those two are placed.
That's what we were told, Nancy, that we had to read that.
Okay,
I don't know.
let's get it out of the way. I don't
That's what
care
makes
if
it official.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Town of Charlestown Finance Committee, September 14, 2020, 6:30 p.m. Due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and in accordance with Governor Sununu's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is a physical location, which is the community room at 26 Railroad Street, and the option to attend remotely and to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which is authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone: 1-646-8656 or 1-346-248-7799. Meeting ID 862-8735-1577 and password 03603, or by going to the following website address: https://us02web.zoom.us/j/8628735157 PWD equals capital VM, capital J, capital L, capital R, capital S, 9, small a, capital N, 3, capital N, small a, B, M, L, capital J, G, U, 2, small w, y, capital Q, capital W, HOA, capital U, 9, capital I, U, capital I, capital U, capital T, 09. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and instructions are provided on the Town of Charlestown's website at www.charlestown-newhampshire.gov. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please call or text 603-371-7201 or email jessica@charlestown-newhampshire.gov. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, also please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Please note this meeting is recorded.
David Richardson.
Roger Tibbetts.
Hi, Chafee. I'm in my office by myself.
Keith Lee.
Bob Davis.
Terry Spilsbury.
Nancy Houghton. We don't have a lot of members here. The first order.
With Patty, we have 7 of 9.
Okay. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes of 8/24/20.
I move we accept them as it's printed. or Submitted.
Okay,
Second.
all right. And there is a small correction on page 2. It starts with Bill Roskansky suggested, and then it goes down to the third line about costs for AIDS. That's AIDS, not capitalized, I believe. Is that correct, Bill? You're talking about teachers' aides?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is passed. What time, do you have any idea when he's going to do this?
He's on now. Jim
He's on.
Fenn is with us. His is the icon with the race car on it.
Okay,
So if you're ready for him, just call out to him.
Jim Fenn,
There he is.
does anybody, do you have any information you want to give at first, Jim?
I'm happy to share information. I'm not quite sure what you're looking for.
Bob, do you want to ask your questions?
Jim, I know some of the things were not expended this year, like i.e. electricity, diesel fuel, things like that. How is that going to offset the higher expenditures for the COVID?
It doesn't, because of the way our budget works. Any money we had left over on June 30th needs to be returned to the towns as part of the tax rate setting process. And we don't have the ability to use a fund balance and carry it forward into the next year to offset New Year's spending. So we didn't save any money on diesel fuel because we ran the buses every day delivering food. We certainly saved money on lighting and heating, but it was the end of the heating season, so we only had a few weeks of heating that we didn't have students in the buildings. We kept most of our people employed, so we didn't run spring sports, but there wasn't a lot of savings, and we did spend some of that money that we were saving on some of the early purchases of COVID supplies, some PPE and things like that, so that we could cover them with some of those funds, not knowing what the new year would bring.
Were any of those COVID type related things covered by the grant?
We got a CARES Act grant. We got about $250,000, and we spent all of that money already. We're in the process of now submitting our request for reimbursement. Most of that money was spent on cleaning solutions, on air purifiers, ionizers for our each HVAC systems. We spent district-wide about $60,000 on plexiglass dividers for students, teachers, and everybody else's workspace. We bought a lot of protective clothing, gowns, masks for staff, and in particular for our nurses. We spent a lot of money on gloves and a lot of that type of protective gear for our staff so that they would be safe. We have bought a lot of disinfectant, hand washing items. We spray down our buses twice a day. We spray down our classrooms at least once a day with a germ killing product that has to sit for 15 minutes after we spray down. So we've invested a lot of money in these solutions and the devices that we use to atomize or spray them in order to provide the protection that we're doing.
Can you tell us this year how many students you have in class? How many are doing the hybrid schooling, and how many are home?
Sure. Our homeschooling as of today is 49 students, and that's a moving target, but it seems to be stabilizing now. We typically have 10 to 15 homeschooled students. And so if we round that up to 50, that's an increase of 35 students, which is about $250,000 loss in adequacy grant across the district. And I don't have a breakdown by town on where those students are, so I can't tell you tonight the impact on Charlestown, but that's what we're looking at for lost revenues. We have 1,497 registered students in our buildings and in our programs this year, which is about the same as we had last year. So we've had some move-ins that have taken the places of the homeschooled students. As far as our students that are doing full remote, but are registered through us, so we're still getting our adequacy funding for them. We have 18 students in the K-8 level that are doing the VLAC remote school program full-time. We have 73 students at the high school doing the VLAC program. Of those, about half are full-time, half are half-time. But at the high school, we typically have 30 to 40 students doing that. So it's about a 50% increase in that number. For the full, what I'm calling the Full Mountain Online, which is our own online program, we have 40 students at the K-8 level and 50 students at the K-4 level, 40 at the K-4 and 52 at the 5-8. As of today, they're doing full 5 days a week online. And at the elementary level, we've pulled together a team of 3, but we'll be adding a 4th teacher this week, teachers to work with these students. At the middle school level, the students participate in their classes 5 days a week, just like our hybrid students participate in their classes 2 to 3 days a week. So the cost there is really just in monitoring the students, not additional educators to teach them.
Bill?
Jim, this is Bill Rudmansky. The New Hampshire retirement system just increased their rates, and I think you spoke about that at the beginning of the school board meeting. Can you
Yep.
tell us how that's going to affect us?
Fasten your seatbelts. The increase for, and let me get my email just a second. The increase for teachers is an 18% increase over the current year's rate. And by teachers, I'm talking about the teachers group, which is our teachers, our paras, and a number of our educational professionals. Because the bulk of our employees fall in that group, without giving any raises, that's an $815,000 budget increase for us next year. For the rest of us in the employee group, the rate's going to 21%, which is a 25.87% increase. Because that's such a small group, that's about $127,000 increase. So that change by New Hampshire retirement alone will increase our budget about $945,000 next year. So one of the conversations we had at our school board meeting before I stepped out to join yours was this and several other cost items we're aware of already. And giving the school board a heads up that these are some of the things we're going to be dealing with, and asking them to think about that and give us some guidance on how they want us to deal with that, and things that they think that we're going to have to do to reduce spending in other areas to offset some of these increased costs.
Jim, you broke up briefly. Could you give the two figures and then the total again?
Sure. The total is about $945,000. The teacher group, which is more than just teachers, is $815,000 and some change. And the employee group, which is mostly bus drivers, custodians, and a few people like me, is $127,000.
Thank you.
Jim, I had a couple of questions. During this this COVID time, are you paying for any advanced or the enhanced internet connections for students in the outlying communities?
We're not. What we have been doing is we do have some hotspots that were given to us through a grant. But more importantly, if we have a student with difficult internet connections, we're asking the families, and a number of them have, reach out to Lynn Phillips, who's our director of technology. And we've got some leverage with Comcast and with Consolidated, and they have been providing better, and sometimes it's still not great, but better connections for some of these families. We also have strong internet in our parking areas now at our schools, so that people can come to our schools and use our internet there. It's certainly not convenient for them in most situations, but it is there now.
Thank you. And one other question. You mentioned earlier that you're trying to keep most everybody employed. A question came up last week at our meeting. Is the school paying for aides during this period?
We're paying for all aides that are working. At this point, we've got 5 or 6 vacancies that we've chosen not to fill because we're trying to figure out exactly what we need for aides and how we're going to use them to best meet the needs of the students. So all the aides that are currently have a contract with us, we are using them, and we're using them with students. They may be with Johnny on Monday and Wednesday and Susie on Tuesday and Thursday, because those are the days that those students are in the building. And that may be a way that we can reduce, at least for this year, some of our cost of aides. But it's still, this is the second week of school, and we're still trying to get all these things put together so we have all the right answers. And I don't know that we do yet.
Thank you.
Do you have aides for classes that have like 2 people in it?
We typically don't have aides in a class with 2 people with the exception of something like our intensive needs programs where we may have 5 students and 5 aides because those are the students with a really high need. We may have we may have a class of 18 students, of which 9 are in the building today, where we have an aide in the classroom. And sometimes the aide is working with a student in the classroom. Sometimes the aide is taking a student online who's remote and working with them because they are having difficulties. And so the aide is doing that type of work with a student who may not be in the classroom that day. So we still do have aides. We do have them in classrooms without a lot of kids, but that's because only 50% of the kids are in the classroom in any given day.
There are 50% of the whole student body in classrooms?
Daily, yes. We've taken, and each principal did it slightly differently, but we did a cohort relationship analysis. And so if there's 100 students in the building, in the school, 50 of them are there today, 50 of them are there tomorrow, so that we only have half the students in any given day. The other half are online remotely, so that they're all getting educated, but they're not all in the classroom. And that way we can do 6 feet of space and do all the social distancing and everything we need to for everybody's protection. So especially in the middle school and the high school, the teachers are teaching their entire class at that given time, but only half of the students are physically in the classroom at the moment that they're teaching.
Jim, do you have any sort of an idea on the total figure of what you had to spend to bring all of these classrooms and this remote learning? Now, the remote learning is going on the same, I take it, as the in-class learning, just simply some people are remote and some are in the classroom?
It's what's called synchronous. So Johnny may be sitting at home on his computer and the teacher has him on a screen on his or her desk. And
Right.
then Susie's in the classroom. And so they're learning the same lesson at the same time. Where you'll see, especially at the high school, some of those things don't work quite as well as when you have a lab class or something like that, where they've got to do a little bit different work. But yes, the students are attending with their cohorts, but only half of them are physically in the building on any given day.
So my question is, do you have an idea as to what you had to spend to bring the classrooms up to, you know, the video and, you know, the transmission equipment in order to do that remote simultaneous learning?
Most of the video equipment we already own, so it hasn't been terrible. We've bought a few cameras, but the cameras were under $200 each. We have some of what's called an owl, and we use it at our school board meeting so you can see the person speaking. Those are about $1,000 each, but we got 18 of them through a grant last year. And so, again, it's not new district money that we spent. We have spent in excess of $300,000 on COVID-related expenses so far this year, of which about $240,000 is covered by the CARE grant. And we thought the rest was covered by FEMA until this morning when FEMA said we're not paying for any school COVID expenses. And so we're stepping back and scrambling, trying to find money to cover the money that we spent on COVID that we thought FEMA was going to pay for.
Thank you.
Jim, this is Bill Roshansky. Did I hear you right during the school board meeting that you were going to ask the towns to cover that discrepancy between what you thought we were going to collect and what we actually collected?
What I said, and Joe Levesque, who is one of our board members, but he's also a selectman in Alsted, reached out to me today because Alsted has about $40,000 of their gopher money, which is a component of CARES Act that they didn't use. And we believe, and the state believes, that Alsted can use that money for some of the things that we purchased for schools at Fall Mountain High School and at the Alsted schools. And so I'm going to be meeting with the Alsted selectmen as soon as I can in the morning tomorrow. I've reached out to Walpole. I haven't had a chance to reach out to Charlestown yet, but I'm hoping that if each of the towns has any money left in their CARES Act that they haven't used, and their deadline for filing for that money is 5 o'clock tomorrow, that we can get together and maybe cover that $68,000. We're not going to ask you to pony up money because we spent it out of your taxes, but if this is money that was offered to you through that CARES Act Gopher funds that you didn't use, then we're asking that you share it with us.
Thank you, Jim. The sound quality is much better in this meeting than the school board meeting.
Yeah, because I'm practically kissing my mic so you can hear me.
Jim, you gave a figure of students enrolled earlier. Could you repeat what that was and what's in it and who's out of it?
Our total enrollment is 1,497 students, which is actually a few more students than we had last year. And that includes all students enrolled in Fall Mountain, including the ones that are 100% remote through Fall Mountain, through the VLAC or the Fall Mountain Online program. What it does not include is any students that are homeschooled. And we have 49 of those as of today. So we've had some move-ins in our 5 towns since school got out last year, because with 35 students leaving us to go homeschooling, I expected that number to drop, and it didn't. It held pretty solid with last year's number.
Nancy Albert has a question.
Albert?
Yes, Jim, Albert St. Pierre here. Can you hear me all right?
I sure can.
Okay, thank you. How is our state aid doing? The one-time money they promised us last spring, are we still expecting all of it to come through?
We are, and it's included in the revenue projections that I had to file, was supposed to file 2 weeks ago. I filed last week for the tax rate. So I've included 100% of the one-time state aid for Charlestown as revenue to Charlestown.
You were on a long pause. Could you begin that answer again, please, Jim?
I sure can. The one-time state aid that all of our towns are getting, and Charlestown's getting a large chunk of that. I've included that in my revenue projection for this year, and it'll be used as a direct offset to your tax rate when it gets set in the fall.
Thank you, Jim. One more question on this retirement fund. Remember, we spoke in the spring about the big increase I saw in your audit, going up from 2.5 million to about 5 million in 1 year. Is that figured into this big increase that you're talking about now, or is that in addition?
Can you ask that question again? I didn't quite hear it.
Come up closer to the mic. In the spring, we talked about the big increase in the audit of the retirement system. It was going from about 2.5 million and almost doubling in 1 year. Has that got anything to do with today's New Hampshire retirement that you're talking about?
I don't know that for a fact, but I believe it has to. And those rates have gone up for every school district in the state, so they haven't raised ours differently than any other school district. But I believe that that has to be a factor in that huge increase, is that their investments are not doing as well as they need them to. There's more people retiring, and they've got to make up that huge, huge deficit.
Thank you.
Sounds like somebody at the state let their mouth overload their wallets.
How any update on negotiations? Is this a teacher negotiation year?
this is a negotiation year for the teachers, and we haven't started our teacher negotiations yet. We have been negotiating what are called memorandums of agreement on return to work conditions under COVID. And we're in the middle of doing that. And so I can't tell you anything except that we are talking with the teachers union and the support staff union collectively on conditions of return to work.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any teachers that have not returned or aides that have not returned because of the virus?
Yes, we have one teacher who has retired, one who's resigned, and I think about a half dozen paras who have decided that because of their age, because of their health, because of something, they're not coming back. We have several teachers who have health considerations who are part of our remote teaching team so that we're able to keep them and continue to pay them and yet and use their expertise, and yet they don't have to be in the buildings right now.
May I?
Albert, yeah.
Jim, seeing this is our town finance committee and we're just beginning our budget process, we are wondering if we've got room. We're planning a water bond, 4.6 million that we want to vote on and match. If the increase overall to the taxpayers is too high, we don't have much of a shot of passing that. Can you give us any kind of numbers on what the school's going to impact Charlestown's taxes so that we can begin to build our budget here in town?
At this point, Albert, because we haven't even started our budget process, we'll be starting it Thursday with the principals. I don't have any real good picture of what it's going to look like yet. I will keep in mind what you just said, though, and I will share that with the principals, and I will try to get back to the select board as soon as I have any information so that you can at least have an idea of what's going on with us.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Jim.
Does anybody else have any questions?
No.
Thanks very much for your input.
No problem. You guys have a good evening. I'll go back to my other meeting.
Thank you.
Get a nice one fuzzy from that, don't you?
Anybody have any comments?
Yeah, we're gonna have to get a printing press to print money.
The
Rosie's not.
increase this past year was 985,000, call it $1 million, without any change in the retirement pension. So if they're on the same trajectory and you put those two together, we could see 2 million.
Certainly. And Terry, add into it what what the state's gonna give us this one time, and then the following year, that's just gonna have a double effect, because we're gonna have to pick that back up. It's a one-time, you know, we'll let, you know, basically we're gonna give you a little money, go spend it. And next year now you're not gonna have that, so everything you spent it on, you're gonna have to make the second payment. You know, we'll make the first car payment for you, but you're gonna make the second one you sell. And then on top of that, any additional increases, you're not gonna get a teacher's contract and a support staff contract without it costing you something. And then, you know, my retirement and my investments, they went up and down. I mean, it's wonderful to be locked in where you're guaranteed, or the state said that you're gonna get X amount of dollars. I'd like to invest some money in it too. I hope this board takes and and looks at all numbers as you guys put together a budget. That's why I'm here this year. Because you're gonna have to wear more than one hat. When I used to run the budget committee at Fall Mountain, I would come here after I got done my budget meeting out to Fall Mountain and share with you folks what you were looking at for money out there. I know that it's got nothing to do with the town, but it still comes out of our pockets here. So
This budget has, you know, right here has offset that one so that we could live.
we used to put away with, not get a town truck, not get this, not get that. But when you start adding, well, if you took 980,000 and just call it 40% of it's going to be ours, could be higher. So I really hope you folks are really cognizant of what's going on around you, not just here in Charlestown. And yeah, I know this town's got to exist, but ain't nobody going to exist if it all mounts up and nobody can afford it.
But we've always tried to keep it pretty much level as best we could. It's gonna be tough to cut though, to make up that kind of.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but Roger, what I'm trying to say is be cognizant of it.
Oh,
You can put down everything that you guys would like to have and need to have, but until, you know, Jim doesn't know because they haven't even met yet. So as they start meeting and they start meeting with teachers, support staff, and these guys are gonna say, well, you know, we're professionals and we gotta have some money. We gotta have some money. And my 401k is gonna make me 18 or 20% guaranteed, and this is gonna work, and that's gonna work, and you know, but at the end of the day, it all comes back to the people.
Right.
Did he say that the contribution to the state retirement for the school was 2.5 and now it's going to 5? Did he say it was going to?
No, I said that if you look at last year's audit,
You
it's
have
right in there.
to dig into it.
It was 2.5 million. This was last year.
Right.
This isn't even including this. I think
Right.
he's not understanding the question. And Terry and I were at a meeting with him last spring, and he explained that it was the actuaries and we weren't going to have to pay it until 2040. It was out there. And so those numbers that I was quoting him in the audit, he said, we didn't have to worry about.
No, but your kids are gonna have to worry about it. You know, you're saddling them with stuff.
But he's saying
no.
right there,
Right.
oh, something, all of a sudden, 850,000, 900. 904, Charlestown pays 45% of that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The 945 is the increase.
So that,
Almost,
945 is
almost 500,000 increase to Charlestown this year, just for the retirement fund.
so the distinction is that what Albert and I spoke with Jim Fenn about last winter, was a actuarial calculation that the district carries as a deferred liability on our balance sheet,
That's right.
but has no cash impact until such time as the various scheduled teachers retire over time. But the figure that Jim mentioned this evening is a current budgetary requirement to
That's an
fund
actuary.
pension in this year. That's a cash impact.
That's what they need this year to keep the kitty up to where it needs to be that the actuaries tell them. Right.
And it's,
Right.
you know, I mean, I think everybody understands when Federal Reserve is doing everything it can to keep interest rates nearly zero, financial assets aren't returning, and you've got defined benefit plans that have promises based on interest rate projections that were set 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Mm.
Again, we're into, the school is taking it all, and why are we sitting here? There's nothing left. Can we afford? Because if you look, I'm looking at the 2020 school report here, and the one-time money that everybody was happy to see, because a year ago, Charlestown's portion was 12,771,000, and in this book, it's 13,280,000. So that's 500,000 more that Charlestown is responsible for. None of the other 4 towns, Charlestown. So the state's going to give us 973.
We spent 500 of it.
So 500 is in there, so we'll get a $400,000 tax break. It'll look great, one time. We're gonna have to pick up that 500,000.
And the 400.
And the half of this thing. We're in trouble, folks. That's all I can say. It doesn't take a whole lot of math when you're adding millions at a time. And we're not talking about a highway truck here or a roof. We're talking mega $1 million coming out of Charlestown taxpayers when the bill comes, not in 3 months, but in a year and 3 months. December of 2021, we're in trouble.
Big time,
So what do we do?
big time.
You know, what's the answer? I mean, the voters said they didn't do the withdrawal. Charlestown has to continue to exist. The school is going to do what they're going to do. What are we going to do? Either do we just raise the taxes and say, is that the only option?
Just keep raising them, because that's what people voted for, because the option was, if we wanted to control it, was separation.
Right.
We can't control it, so there is no control. Just spend it. Just listen, send the check.
Now, he's the financial manager, is he?
Yep.
Yeah, but you can't blame this all on Jim.
No, I'm
Whoa,
not. I'm just asking.
I'm telling you right now, don't go there.
Yeah.
Don't go there. That ain't that man's problem. He doesn't even live in the district.
Yeah.
He's doing a job.
Right.
He's providing a service. He comes to work every morning. He's got people that he works for down there in the administration that tell them, prepare this, this, and this. He works for somebody.
Right.
Not Jim Fenn's problem. I will say that, at least last year, when I questioned him about some stuff and got up in Charlestown and made a statement, and I says, now, Jim, while I'm standing here and everybody is still listening, you tell me where I said something that was wrong or I've lied. And he said, no, you were very accurate. And then I went to Walpole and I repeated the same story there. People don't want to listen until they get their tax bill. They open it up and says, well, I didn't understand this. I just don't know how many people can exist the way they do in life and not truly understand the ramifications from spending money. And I'm getting harsh with you folks because somebody's got to get it across to them because they don't understand it. Well, it was only a few bucks. They said it weren't going to do this and it weren't going to do that. When Albert and these other 4 gentlemen are going to send them tax bills out, not this year, okay? This is really going to happen in December of 2001. But everything you guys do between now and 2001 is going to determine just how big this is going to be. And somebody's tax bill is going to go up $800,000, $1,500. And they're going to say, well, the bank's only been taken out. I don't have this. The money's going into escrow because they can't even save it themselves. So the bank takes it from them, all these mortgage people. You know, 25 years ago, there was no such thing as escrow money. If you were a homeowner, you put your own money away for town taxes. Didn't have an escrow account. But so many, these banks got stuck with so many homes because, oh, they can make the mortgage payment. I don't have my taxes. Now I'm 3 years behind. So the bank says, well, we'll make sure that they don't get it. Everybody that makes a mortgage payment and they got this thing, they're going to have to go around and reevaluate what the escrow amount of money is going to be because it isn't going to be anywhere near enough.
So can I ask a question that maybe the committee can start looking at? Because the selectmen are going to meet on September 30th with department heads. We're going to start talking about wages so that we don't come back to you every year. We've been too late. You come to these finance committee meetings and you say, what are the selectmen are going to give for rate increases to the health? What's that going to cost us? So we're trying to do that. So maybe you can give us a little direction. You got John and Bill and myself here when we sit down with them. And my question would be, what would be the sense? Jim couldn't answer it because they haven't started negotiating. We shouldn't give our police and our highway people and anyone less than they're getting out there. We can't balance the taxes on our local people's salaries. What do we think that the teachers will get so that we should give that to our staff? I just throw that up. Does anybody have a sense of help us selectmen out when we start negotiating pay raises in Charlestown?
Is what you're asking? So you're suggesting that the employees of Charlestown should get the same as whatever the contracts say for the teachers at Fall Mountain? Is that what you just said?
I'm asking. Do you
No,
think they should?
Right. No. Right. So the next part of my question is, what is their average? Is it a 4% increase, 3%?
Is the school percentage or merit?
In the school? No. What I'm asking is in the school.
School negotiates on a just a percentage.
3-year contract, right, John?
Right. They will try to negotiate a 3-year contract, and it'll be so much the first year, so much the second year, so much the third year.
It runs around 3%.
I'm going to say it's usually somewhere between 2 and 3%, but I do know that back after the crunch, so I don't think it was 2008, but it was maybe the 2012 negotiation. I think it was the first year I was on. They actually took, I think, a quarter and a half, which was unprecedented as far as I was concerned. And I suspect that we may be able negotiating for them, but they're not heartless. They know what's going on. They know there's unemployment out there. I don't think they're going to be pushing for 3, I guess is my point, you know.
Whatever they go for, as far as percentages go and so forth, I think it's pretty much through the town history, the town of Charlestown will vote it down, the other 4 towns will agree with it. So I think it's, you know, like Mr. Street just said, I think it's been right around 2.5% to 3% in the last few years. What, isn't that?
Oh, yeah, no, we've had some years that it's gone because they went a year without a contract.
Yeah.
What were the numbers we got the other day from Jessica? Health insurance in town is going to take a huge jump, and our retirement for our staff. Police are going to go up from 15% to 25%.
The police are on the same tier as their bus drivers and
so we've got
custodians, so that's 25 for that.
My thought in town was you can't give a wage increase if you're giving huge amounts into, if they want to stay even on health insurance and retirement and not kick any more into that out of their pay, well, then they can't get the dollars. And I think it comes back to this is, if you really dig into that 4.8 million of retirement, something was given in negotiation that we never get to vote on as taxpayers. We vote on that 3% dollar figure, but that doesn't include the benefits. And that's where we're getting broken up there. And we've been looking at them here in town.
It's just like when they give them the sick leave buyback, because that was a bone that they threw to them during negotiation times, John, when they couldn't quite get this money. Well, we'll give you this and we'll give you that. And we got teachers retiring and walking out of there with $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. And it depends which town, because it goes directly to the town. So,
I don't think there's much of that left, but
no, but we bought that all up. But
right,
like
right.
There were a bunch of unfunded mandates because they put it in. They said, well, where did this all come from? oh, well, because we couldn't get them too big a pay raise, we did this, we did that, we did the other. And they're all things that a negotiating team puts together and the general public doesn't vote on. But, I mean, those are just an example of the things that happen behind closed doors in these sessions to get a teacher's contract. When I was out there the last year that I was there, and they were on their third year of not having a contract, and we were down to the last evening of the contract, and they had done a straw vote, and they said, nope, we're gonna go another year, we'll strike, we'll do this, we'll do that. And Chuck Shaw asked me if I'd come in and talk to him. This was 8:30 at night. I said, I don't know what I can explain to him. We got a whiteboard out, and I showed him what they lost. And the fight was all over non-participation in healthcare. One stumbling block were never, because the union had tattooed them, branded them to can't give that up. So I went back and I showed 3 of the last years would have showed them, and what this taking a small amount into the health insurance pool, you know, picking up 2%, 3%, another 3%. The dollars and cents that they'd left on the board, they said, why didn't anybody tell us that? Now, John, I'm a simple man, and I had to go in there and explain that to educators. And I said to myself, I just can't fathom that the union snowballed them guys for 3 years. And I told them they would never get a contract without some participation, some skin in the game on healthcare. Yep. We had teachers, instead of taking a day off because they had the sick leave buyback, we're going to go to school sick. We'll go to the emergency room. I ain't going to pay nothing. And that's why our premiums were skyrocketing, even on our self-insured part. That's the part that we kept picking up and picking up and picking up. And then we'd have somebody come in and explain to it, why has it gone up? They showed us how much emergency room money was being spent, not regular health care, you know, where you go see your doctor, make an appointment. We're not going to take time off from work. We'll go at 5 o'clock at night. We'll just go to the emergency room, get our prescription, do it that way. And once we did that, and they started having some skin in the game, we saw that come down and come down and come down. And I told them it was very simple. They weren't going to get one until it, so you might as well take it. Well, we're giving up. And when I showed them in black and white what this stood in money, they said, why didn't anybody really tell us this? I don't know, but somebody has got to start explaining to some people, and the people of Charlestown, they all also need to be educated and understand there's 5 of you selectmen now. So you guys can really, you can spread the workload out more and explain it to all the taxpayers that are going to have trouble paying their taxes and what this is going to amount up to. It's not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
Move on your agenda.
Yep.
How do we solve that though? If the school's going to go up no matter what, we're going to absorb those increases. So how do we don't get around that, and we can't chop our budget to reflect what those increases will be. We have no choice but to eat a lot of that. No matter how you explain it to the people.
There's people in the other towns that do sympathize and understand what's going on. Not everybody involved is happy with the situation out at the school.
Oh, I agree.
Okay.
But either way, we're still swallowing that pill.
I know,
every year.
And our pill's probably a little bigger than we think it should be, and so on. So there's people in all the towns that don't like what's there, but they're led to believe that we've got to. Well, when Chrysler or Ford needs to do something to stay afloat, they do what they've got to do to stay alive.
So what's the answer to what you just said? You said not everybody's happy. Maybe there's a few people. What is the answer for? Are you saying everybody really needs to come together? Or
I don't think enough people actually, Richard, understand Dave. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think they do the math. And when somebody does it for them and lays it all out and what it really, you take this one page synopsis when you get out to Fall Mountain to look at the budget, even when you come to the town one and we give you a one page here to look at, there's a lot of people that start to ask questions. How much is it up? What's this going to do to my taxes? But you can turn it back to my tax bill of $159,000. What is this going to cost me? Someone can't do math for you. And that's bad. That's bad. You can't do math. It's so important to understand the ramification of these numbers. You guys have got a fruitless job. I'm not poking any of one of you folks trying to poke the bear, but somebody's got to try to get this across because some of them are spending beyond their capability to pay. That's the sad part. Well, I thought we needed it. I guess we needed it. We got to do it. We got to educate the kids yet. Maybe we got to change some things. I don't know. Everybody might like to drive a Porsche, but I notice it's a lot of GMCs and a lot of lesser quality cars being, run around. I don't know exactly what all the answers. I spent 12 years out there. I spent 3 years as a selectman. I spent 17, 18 years on the budget committee. It's just trying to get people to understand what these numbers all mean.
I think to Bob's point, one of the things that I'll be curious to see is, it's my understanding we've sold a lot of homes in Charlestown in the last 6 months. A lot of people have fled the cities, they've moved out to the country. Paying what I think are exorbitant prices for some of these homes, and I'm wondering whether have they overspent or are they intending on paying taxes based on?
I think some of them are so afraid of where they are going. What some of that stuff's selling for, I'm shaking my head. I'm gonna put my house on the market.
What, can I make a comment?
Yeah, sorry.
So one thing to keep in mind too, when we're looking at this budget, and I don't have a number because I didn't talk to Jessica about it today, but the budget that we currently are working off of, the select board bought some of that tax rate down last year, that tax rate. So I don't know how much money they have to buy down this tax rate. So if they say they bought $1 last year and we increase the budget, say the 282,000, then really it's a $2 increase to the town if we can't buy back that other $1. So can
you repeat that?
Just wanted, what?
Could you please repeat that? You kind of broke up.
Okay, so last year when we did the tax rate, the select board opted to buy down the tax rate with the unreserved fund balance that we had.
The fund balance.
I don't know, right, I don't know how much they have to play with come this fall to buy any of it. So if in fact last year the tax rate went up like $1.50, the board bought $1 of it, then it only really went up 50 cents. If they don't have that amount this year to cover that $1 and the budget goes up another $1, then really it'll be $2 reflected in the new tax rate.
Patty's 100% correct.
Right.
And if I remember, I wasn't a selectman, but if I remember right, you spent down all the fund balance that the state would let you spend. Am I right or wrong on that one?
They have been, is my understanding.
As I understand that fund balance, it's money that, part of the number in there is money that hasn't been collected in taxes that the state gives us credit for. It's not real money.
That's true.
It's not.
That is correct. But you do use it. But last year you did use 282,000 of it to buy down $1. So that's all I'm saying is, if we're looking at this budget, we might need to consider level funding it, because you don't want to increase it another $1, and God forbid there isn't enough to buy it down, then you're up the $2.
and then you borrow a TAN note because you didn't leave enough in your own coffers. It's like your own personal checkbook because you got money in it. You're not guaranteed that this money's all gonna come in. So in the past, we have spent it. Nothing against what the selectmen did. When I was a selectman, we used to try to, figure out about where we needed to be and take as much of the fund balance. It's the people's money, but it's a balance in your checkbook. When you've got no money in your checkbook, the town's checkbook is like anybody else's. It's got a bottom to it. And when you don't have it, you know what you do? You sign on the dotted line and you go and borrow some.
If I could, I don't think we have an answer tonight for Dave and Roger's question, but I would only direct you back to what I was told, and Terry was told. We were all last March at district meeting. There's a school board group, there was a big group that said they're gonna fix this for Charlestown. And every voter in Charlestown, by 400, I lost my solution by 400 votes. So you need to go ask those people that promised that they would fix it to get those 900 votes. What are they gonna do? And that's Mike Harrington and Mary Henry and Scott Bushway and the whole school board and the administration that said, we're gonna fix this. If you were at any of those meetings, you heard it. And so I lost, so I can't fix it because my solution got voted down. So somebody else is gonna have to come up with a solution.
And I'm gonna tell you this, I'm not going back out to Fall Mountain to do battle with anybody. Okay, I'm here this evening because I truly care. There's two things. I need to build a new $2.5 million building. I'm not building it in Charlestown. My brother and I had to go up north today, and we've talked about this till we were both blue in the face. I'm going to have to build it in another town. On top of that, if I build that building in another town, then I got to take $90,000 or $100,000 worth of registration revenue that the town keeps. So I just keep beating myself up in this own town. So, because I don't see any solutions here. I cannot build another building and pay any more taxes than I pay. So somebody that's given a lot of his life to try to make this place work, I turn it over all to you guys, but you're gonna have to come up with some answers because there'll be more of us leaving.
But a lot of these things, like 18%, 19% retirement increases, that's statewide. So no matter where you go, you're going to get hit with that.
Yeah, but if I go to a town where they only paying 35% of that project, not 45% of it, you always save another chunk and another chunk and another chunk. There are places that the tax rates are not what they are in Charlestown.
No, I agree. But all those places with the lower tax rates have much higher
I haven't
property
calculated,
values.
so this is impressionistic, it's not a calculated figure, but just having poured over the other towns for comparative purposes so many times last year, my gut tells me that the typical town in New Hampshire is paying an overall mill rate of around 25 to 28. Those that are over 30 are relatively few. Those that are over 35 are 1 to 2 handful out of 254 municipalities. We're in the top 2. So, Bob's point is that you can go to other places in New Hampshire, and the value grant list relative to the expenses is just going to treat you a lot better. If you want to go over to Rye, you're going to have a mill rate of 10.
So you guys have got a lot of work ahead of you. I mean, I'm just trying to give you some encouragement, but you got to look at everything. You can't go into this with some tunnel vision because there's just so many things to be looking at.
Was Scott Bushway invited tonight, or has anybody talked to him?
He's at the school board meeting.
They meet Monday nights at school board.
Yeah.
I see.
But he was gonna get information and never called back. I have an idea that since he was gonna get it from Jim Fenn, and I have an idea that since Jim Fenn said he was gonna speak here, that Scott didn't do anything on it.
Mm-hmm.
This quagmire is just gonna get worse. It truly is, you know. But you're right, the houses are selling for more, and that's why you see, enrollment. I think a lot of these people that are coming in and buying right now aren't bringing necessarily families. I think they're probably people, or maybe one child, they're probably people that, and I understand from a friend of mine who's a realtor, and there's a lot of it coming in that doesn't need any finance. They're paying 225, and they don't, when they sign on the line and make their offer, is it, you know, contingent to financing? Cash payments. So there's some money coming in from, but people haven't made their money here. They haven't lived in the town, made their money here in order to pay these prices. They're bringing it in from Jersey and Connecticut. I've got a friend that lives in Connecticut that runs a business down there, and he just wants a house up here so he can get his wife and him away from it for most of the time. So it's hard to get Connecticut.
So with that in mind, if the, you know, if the prices of homes are going up, then in theory, the appraisals and the assessments are going to be increasing, at least for some of those. So the tax revenue should increase, but that, well, I know, but most of the people coming in who are paying cash in a bigger home are going to pay their taxes for the most part. But certainly it, you know, has an effect on some of the others. But our grand list or our income doesn't have any effect on what we pay for the school other than the number of students, right? I mean, we're paying based on the number of students versus if we have more income coming in, it's...
The grand list helps fluctuate what your tax rate is, because you have more taxable property, so you would drop it a few cents. You got to increase your grand list pretty good to start making.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is that ultimately has an effect on your tax rate.
Dave, you're on it.
Right.
You're on it.
I would need to correct that. We're not paying on the number of students, we're paying on the percentage of students. Because the other towns are going down faster than we are, so our percentage is not going down.
But it's not relative to the tax revenue coming into the town, though.
I didn't understand. I guess I'm not asking you. So we don't. As Albert said, we don't pay on the number of kids. They take the budget, 42 million, 44 million, divide it by the number of kids. That's the division.
Right.
It's where the kids are. If Charlestown's got 40,
right,
we might, if I understood that Walpole sent a bunch of kids to private school. There was a lot of parents in Walpole that put some of their, I mean, that must be some of the 50. I don't know. You're out there more than I am, but this was what somebody said to me. There was some kids, they got the opportunity to go to some private schools.
Mm-hmm.
But if them kids, if that goes down and Walpole sends less kids, I mean, Charlestown just, I mean, that costs us when other people take kids out.
Right. Our
That
percentage
rate,
goes up.
That's right.
Yeah.
The number of the 42 million, the 44 million, the 45 million stays there. See, it's the division by the number of kids by this. That's how they do that.
But I think just to clarify, 20 years ago, half of that budget was determined by your taxable value.
Yeah.
And the other half was ADM, average daily membership. And now it's all determined by average daily membership. So
that's where we're at times.
Yeah.
But like Albert said, even if the total number of dollars going to Fall Mountain may not change or go down, but if our property values, our mill rate might be down a few cents. That's the only place that it would change.
Well, let's move on to another pleasant subject. How about the water?
Yep, and I think Patty may be able to open that up. Patty probably has the most information on it.
She left.
yeah, we did lose her.
We did. She knew she was coming up on this.
Yeah, her phone could have died. She might try to dial back in, but she's not with us right now.
Okay, well, I can start. Did she get lost or did she go away?
She's not on right now, but if she dials in, I'll let you know.
Okay. Selectmen have had a workshop the other day. We're looking at 4.6 million as a budget for 4,626,000, I think. A budget for this water interconnect, which we would be asking for a bond. We think we can get the information we need to make a good presentation. We want to start soon having presentations to planning board and public hearings so that people know what's coming, that they'll be voting. It's really, I don't think, a choice. I think it's something we need to do, and you'll see some of that. If you were here when Dave Duquette held up the water that he gets out of the tank in North Charlestown, it's fine as long as you look at that black stuff in the bottom of the bottle, but when he shakes it up and it all becomes black, you don't want to be drinking North Charlestown water. There's a lot of information that we want to get out to people on that, but we want to start here. Our hope is we're applying for grants. We hope that we can get it down by half. That would have to be funded by the town and spread over a bond over 20 years, 20 or 30 years. So that's what we're looking at. And I think that's the one big thing in town. And if we can pass the bond, we really wouldn't even get the project in the ground for another year after that, because they need several, I think it was 900,000, in the $900,000 number was just to do the engineering and get it ready to go, which you wouldn't do quickly. So you'd probably be September before you got your bids in, and you really don't want to start a 1 year long water project in September. You'd rather start it in the spring. You could put it out to bid in the fall so somebody would know that they're ready to go on April 1st. We're talking about 14,000 feet of 12-inch pipe from about the Indian Shutters area of North Charlestown through Hemingway's Field, down Old Claremont Road to Lover's Lane, hooking on existing people down there who don't have enough water pressure. There's a few that their wells are not good, they would hook on. So you could gain a few hookups on that. That might help pay some of it. We've got a lot of information. Dave Duquette has capacity. Bull Run seems to be too good to be true, perfect water. That if we stop trying to make the water in North Charlestown drinkable with filters and all of the stuff we're doing up there, there's a little bit of savings to offset there. And the numbers are, we pump about 330,000 gallons a day out of Bull Run, and it has a capacity of 1.2 million gallons. So we're using about a quarter of that capacity. So, and the 330 includes the North Charlestown system. So there's enough in Bull Run to supply the town and expansion for quite a while. And it seems to be very good water.
So when there is any conversation about what is our growth potential in North Charlestown, what is our growth potential along Route 12, you know, somebody had brought up, you know, will Hemingway Farms ever be developed into something? Could it be Scenic Hill? Could it be, you know, certainly a lack of water should not be an issue for a long time.
Bill, are you missing anything from the presentation we got from GHB?
No, and the needs are safe water for everyone, avoiding fines and penalties from the state, and being able to develop Charlestown.
Right. Where is Bull Run again?
Lover's Lane.
Lower Lover's Lane.
And I never know the
Right by the tracks there.
yeah,
Optical solution.
Right.
Behind there.
the optical solutions, that brick building
Yeah,
down there.
yeah.
And it's out back of it.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
It's a gravel pack, it's not a ledge well, it's a gravel pack well, unbelievable volume.
If we achieve the targeted 50% in grants and the bond is 2.3 million. What roughly do we expect the annual lease or bond pearl to be?
That's why I was hoping Patty was on. She had those. I'm thinking she said around, did she say 280,000?
Yeah, that's the number I had in my head, so she must have.
It's 200 and it's roughly 290,000 the first year, and then it goes down each year.
Thank you.
And
So
Patty,
about $1 on the mill rate.
Patty, can you update us on this water rate increase that we're getting this November? Were you suggesting that might be enough to cover that bond?
So my initial thought on the water increase was that it covered enough for the bond payment when we calculated it out. And the board would like to see some of that obviously put away for future projects because we know there's some lines and stuff that need to be replaced. Depending on what you want to stock away depends on how much of that will cover the bond payment. Because in some of the meetings, it's been kind of implied or noted that the increase was to go to the other projects, not the bond payment. So, but at this point, if we only stashed away a little bit of money and covered the bond payment for a few years, then you wouldn't need an increase.
Thank you.
Of this bond, how much is paid by taxpayers and how much is paid by water users?
I believe it's all water users. Patty?
Just by the users.
However, the chunk of those users are also taxpayers who are looking at all the rest of this.
I totally understand that. Some people have to have their own well and septic system too.
Right. No, I get it.
Well, and but the town is on the hook to pay the bond. That's why everybody has to vote on it.
Mhm.
So everybody gets a vote, whether you're a water user or not. The water users pay it in their fee. And but if it were to fall apart, I still have a question about fire hydrants. Everybody gets to use a fire hydrant if they need it, whether you're on the water system or not. They tapping in, getting water for a fire. And so it is every community needs that service. But it's paid for by the users.
So just to
Yes, it is paid by the users because when we had the brush fire up here near the park, they got hooked into the park's hydrant and we paid the water bill for that usage.
So to say the exact same thing and just be totally certain we're saying the same thing, it's not going to hit the real estate tax. It's going to be funded through the water sewer fees.
Yes. But it takes the whole town, and it takes 60% now that we're a SB2 town. It used to be 2/3 when we did it the old town meeting way to pass a bond. Now you need 3/5, 60%.
So when you guys are, when you have your, your public meetings and explanation sessions and things like that, you're still going to have to walk a fine line because to just go out and say, well, don't worry to the people, say, well, it's going to be paid for by the users. That's easy, But then again, a big percentage of those taxpayers are the users too.
Yes.
So they'll have a voice.
But they also want to drink. To me,
right.
Water is, I could do with without a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Water is not one of them. And
it's also like, I don't use the water and I'm not a sewer, so I don't even know what the rates are. You hear people talk about it and, as far as the pure dollars and cents out of your checkbook for an average household, I don't even know what it is for a year.
What would 290,000 work out to an upcharge in water?
It would be 2 cents, roughly.
Per foot or gallon?
Per cubic foot.
I'll give you a case study if you'd like. I've got 4 buildings that are tied to the water and sewer system. 2 of them are unoccupied and haven't drawn a drop in 20, 30 years. They pay $40 water $40 sewer minimum charge each quarter for a grand total of $320 a year for nothing. And I have a tenant in my cottage, and she lives there solo. And by and large, Maureen and I are very frugal with water. And from my conversations with Patty, we're way under average consumption. And for those 4 buildings, our water sewer bill comes out around $2,200 to $2,400 a year. So it's not insane.
I can interject one thing though, Terry, in that regard. Anyone who has an empty building, you actually do have a choice. You can do a complete disconnect and Bill can attest to this. You can do a complete disconnect from the building and not pay the 40 and 40 anymore. But should at some time in the future you decide to reconnect, you pay the one-time reconnection fee of, at this point, it's $750. So some people weigh the odds. If you think it's only going to be a few years and that you're going to carry the 40 or 40, then great. That's better than paying the $750 later. But if you have no intentions of ever having water drawn from that building again, then you're better off just disconnecting it. And if 20 years from now you want to turn it back on, then you pay the $750 or whatever it is. But no one that has an empty building has to keep that connection if you don't ever plan on using water there.
Point well taken. I remember going through that assessment within a year or two of purchasing the property. And when you know your break even, knowing that you're going to have to pay $750 at that time was out around 8+ years. And I remember thinking, well, I'll probably get these up and running within 8 years. But the problem is, as time goes by, you're faced with that assessment fresh in each new year, and no benefit for time past. So, you know, I'm still betting I'm going to get those buildings up and running within 8 years.
Do you want to start another subject tonight, or should we adjourn? Because we were trying to keep the meetings to an hour.
I think you could adjourn because we talked about the selectmen meeting. We're going to do a full day session on September 30th to try and get some of the numbers so that we can get this to be a better flow at this finance committee than it has been in years past. You can come in and just try and get you those wage increases, try and get you all, if we can meet with the department heads all in one day by taking an entire day. So that we can come in at your next meeting. Have you set up your next meeting? We're going to skip the first Monday in October and start the second Monday, October. Did anyone
I think it said second Monday.
We had discussed second Monday in October.
Yeah.
And then starting the week in.
Okay, because if we did that second Monday in October, hopefully the selectmen will have gotten you the department heads budgets and some salary information, or we'll be able to give it to you at that October meeting. And maybe not drag it out like it got dragged out last year.
I doubt we're prepared to have a meaningful discussion on capital expenditures tonight, but I'm curious, what was cemetery update? What did that relate to?
I don't know. We were talking about it in the last meeting.
One of the things in particular was the road repairs.
Yep.
Nancy.
Yep.
Wondering about the encumbrance, because last year they said this is really going to be a question, I think, for it's his name Stacy.
Stacy, yeah. But I thought Rosie was going to get some information.
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, Rosie Smith will look into this with the trustees and the cemeteries.
Okay.
Okay, another comment, sorry. The board has put a freeze on spending, and that includes encumbered money. So I don't know how that plays into all this, when you're talking to Stacy, but realistically, there's been a freeze.
For this year?
Yes. Which included last year's money.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we did, the select board did a freeze. Well, if somebody's got something they have to spend, they need to bring it to us every other Wednesday. And we'll take a look at them individually, but we're just looking at what's coming and trying to be proactive till we know what's gonna hit for this year. It's gonna be, some things like the ambulance have gone way over in parts. We gotta do some more homework and find out where these budgets stand right now. No, we don't have that printing press. We gotta make it balanced.
I'd like to go back to the school. It was brought up at the school meeting. The school board said that they would fix this. I don't know what that meant. What does that mean? That's what that was to me the big thing with the whole withdrawal. Is I'm not sure that the information was disseminated well enough to the people. I think spreadsheets that were, everything I heard was, well, this is going to cost us less than that. I think what we needed to see was spreadsheets that showed this is what we pay for this part of the school system now, and then have a column that shows this is what we know is going to cost us after this is done. And with everything detailed right down through, and I don't think that was done, not for the people anyway. So I think, once again, most of the people went into a complete ignorance of everything. And that's, everybody I talked to was just afraid of it because they felt they didn't have enough information. And there was a lot of information out there saying that Charlestown was going to get really hurt by this too. And there was a lot of information that said that Charlestown was going to profit from it. So a lot of people were totally confused. So I think that was one of the issues. So when the school board said that they're going to fix it, I don't even know what that means. What does fix it mean?
Well, if you can't get the school board to even sit through a session when they get up and walk out, that doesn't say much for the school board.
No, it doesn't matter. It's not being fixed, and I don't know what fixing it means.
Just a question about the state, sorry. So if somebody like Belinsky got in and figured out how to fix this, what's the earliest we could get relief that way from the state?
Well, 2021, they'll start the next biennium budget. If they pass the budget in June, which is usually what they do, you would start seeing it in 2022.
And if we can get trillions of dollars in aid for COVID, it'd be nice to get just a bit to cover retirement.
But he didn't even get voted in.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, he's not gonna make it
I know.
What claim us lawsuit, he won a lawsuit how many years ago? What's been done at the state level?
Well, that's
What's been
just
done?
it. They all talk a good show,
Yeah.
but once they're in, very little gets done after that.
Being studied.
The rhetoric is good on the way in, but it's pretty bad on the way, once you're in.
And I was just using him as an example. If the state
No,
was
I'm
gonna do
not talking
anything, what's
just
the
him.
earliest.
The state was told back in the Clinton lawsuit, they've done absolutely nothing at all without anybody.
Are they doing anything on the other lawsuit?
Con Valley.
Nothing happened.
It's
You don't even care about
Because
it.
nothing is going on in the.
You're talking about the Conval lawsuit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with it. I know that other schools have signed on to it. I believe, I don't know if Fall Mountain has signed on to it yet or not, but I believe Keene has, Winchester has, I think Claremont's looking at it.
That's grinding slow.
That's what?
That process grinds slow.
Oh, yeah.
It does, it does. There is a commission that is studying education, that is supposed to be making its recommendations to the next House when it's seated in 2021. And it's different than the committees because the committees in the past were always very political, but these commissions are nonpartisan. Supposedly, I'll be curious to see what they come back with. But I think we, you know, it's always been my contention that we need to look at Concord to not downshift New Hampshire retirement onto the towns. You know, that was a deal that New Hampshire made however many years ago, and it's not our fault. We didn't negotiate those deals with the New Hampshire retirement system, but we're paying the bill for it, you know, so.
Well, I had the privilege of going down last summer. One selectman from each town was invited to go sit with the governor, and he explained it quite clearly. He was putting $1.1 billion more dollars into the budget than they've had before. And why he vetoed the state budget is because the Senate and the House, which were both Democrat, wanted $1.3 billion. And he couldn't justify that other $200 million in there. That's why he vetoed it. He thought $1.1 billion was enough. But the Senate wanted to put it into social services. The House wanted to put it into education. They needed, he just left it to them. He said, I'm vetoing it. This is what you're going to get. And he was right, because they looked at him and they said, well, the economy's doing so well, you can spend the 1.3 billion more and have no problem. And he said, I can right now, but the next biennium, what if it's not there? And obviously, what if is COVID? It's not there. And so he can't, he's not even going to find that 1.1 billion, which is where we got our big increase in Charlestown. So, but he explained it very well. If you understand budgets and numbers, he put it out there clearly why he vetoed it. And 1.1 billion more, $13 billion budget for the state of New Hampshire. And he explained it and put the money out there. And so to say that the state, I don't know why we keep thinking that Portsmouth and somebody else is going to fund us. They're not going to fund us any more than Walpole wants to fund us. Because if that was going to work, why wouldn't changing the formula within our district work? If all we need to do is say the richer towns need to support the poorer towns, then Walpole needs to support Charlestown. Never going to happen. We can't get that vote. So why do we think Portsmouth's going to fund Falmouth? And yeah, and from $24 a thousand to $17 in Charlestown. And where are we now? We're at 24 again. So they spend it. And now we're screaming against. We want the same lawsuit that solved it in 98, or we thought so because we got a little relief. So why do we keep repeating the same thing and expecting it to be different? I don't see the state solving the problem. What we were asking for with this separation from Falmouth was to let us solve this problem in this room, in this town. But we didn't get that option. And there was no clarifying that budget. That budget out there is a mess. There is no clarifying it. There are not enough accountants to straighten out that mess we've got out there. We saw it, Terry and I did a lot of pulling it apart, and the number of times Mary Henry walked out of meetings when we tried to get to that information, it's to make sure that we keep paying. And we're going to keep paying. Not the state going to fix it, and the other towns aren't going to fix it, and now Charlestown has said we're not going to fix it.
But the state's the one breaking it. So I fixed it, I mean, at least they can stop breaking it. Or if they're going to break it, then they can offset it by fixing it too, and kind of hopefully net out to zero effect.
But they're
I
giving us.
mean, we'd have this huge increase,
But I guess that's the part
whether we were part of the SAU or not. If we had our own Charlestown school district, we'd still be hit by this increase.
No, we would get into this formula, which is way out of bounds. We know we're paying, when we have 4 buses out of 16 and we're paying 45%.
I'm just talking New Hampshire retirement system. We'd still be hit by stuff like that.
We're paying the percentages at the high school for those teachers. That's why Charlestown's gonna pay 45% of that 945,000 in the retirement, that one line. It's because of that formula. It's not because we have all the teachers and all the kids at the high school, and that's part of why we lost, because we said, we're not gonna pay you until you tell us how many kids we have, and everybody hung us for that there. But does anybody today know how many kids we're paying for? Ask a simple question, and if you can't get an answer, why do we keep asking the question?
I think though, Albert, to answer your question about why the state should fix it, in my opinion, as we sit here and we look at this budget, and this has been my argument for years, we're going to decide how much we're going to spend on the police department. We're going to decide how much Keith's going to get for his highway department. And I absolutely believe that Charlestown should pay for all of that. Our police, protecting our citizens, our highway department, fixing our roads. But the state takes care of Route 12. And the state takes care of Route 12 because it ties our communities together. It's the free flow of goods and services and people all over the state. And the state doesn't seem to have a problem funding its own highway system. But when you look at the largest portion of the money we spend in this town, we'll spend between $160,000 and $180,000 for every student that walks across that stage at Fall Mountain. And we're not going to see the lion's share of that benefit. Those kids are going someplace else to work. And they're going to Portsmouth and they're going to Molten Borough. I guarantee you, if you told Molten Borough and Portsmouth that you're only going to be able to utilize for your services the kids you produce, and they're going to say, I don't have enough kids to build my houses and plumb my buildings and, you know, fight my lawsuits. I have to get kids from other communities to come in and do that. Then pay your share of the bill. Education is a state resource, and the state needs to start paying for it. I'm not asking the state to come in and bail us out of our police budget or rec department budget. But by golly, we're not seeing the full share of the benefit of our education budget. And those that are ought to be paying for it.
I think it's $5.1 million.
So what?
They're giving Charlestown $5.1 million. And we still have the tax rate we have, so that's more than.
Well, I understand that, but when Terry tells us that over on the coast, you can get a mill rate of $10, and if you go up around Lake Winnipesaukee, you can get a mill rate around 3 or 4. You know, if this is a state resource, then it ought to be better distributed across the state.
By the way, I believe
but those mill rates are also based on the town's valuation. And a town like Meredith on the lake, their town's valuation is probably 3 or 4 times, maybe even more than ours. And the same goes for a town like Portsmouth. I mean, the industry alone in those communities, their valuation is huger, which is going to lower the tax rate. It's all relative. It's all plays into each other. I don't think you can just look at a rate and say, well, this town only pays $10. What's their town value?
I agree with that, because to tell you the truth, not that I want to move, but I've looked around, you know, Exeter, places like that, just to figure out if I should move or whatever. And I look at all these places, and for a comparable home that I have, sure, their mill rate might be 3/4 of what I'm paying or something, but I'm going to have to pay almost 3 times more for the house over there. So you look at the taxes, the bottom line taxes, I'll be paying as much or more someplace else than I am here. The mill rate is high, a house value is low.
You're making a very valid point, but it has a flip side. You may not dramatically reduce the dollar figure you have to pay in taxes.
That's right,
That's your point.
if any.
But you have a much higher value because you have people who are deriving much higher incomes.
Oh, I agree with all
They
of
have
that.
they have a much higher net worth. They're going to be able to sell the house that they paid 3 times as much for that or more. And so they have the means, or they are better prepared to absorb the cost. And a community like Charlestown's, where we don't have people bidding up real estate value and they are tapped out where they're at, cannot afford that same amount of taxes. At the end of the day, I mean, I think it would be marvelous also for the state to pick up more. I would support that. But being a pragmatist, I deal with the world I'm in at the moment, and I say, what are the levers we actually have at our disposal right now, while we keep working to persuade the state to somehow take up more of the burden. And so, you know, the outlook fundamentally behind the withdrawal proposal was that if you can't control something because it's being determined in a regional school district that you can't control, then you need to do something else if you're going to actually be able to assert control. So this finance committee has an enormous amount of influence in controlling the PD and the fire department, et cetera, and we have absolutely zero influence. That's the fundamental problem. We're just not in a position to actually make any decisions that affect the school fund. So the purpose of withdrawal was fundamentally a matter of process. It was a matter of redefining who gets to make the decisions about spending and reassigning.
Yeah,
And
I agree with
it's
that.
actually
100%.
startling to me that it was defeated by the margin that it was. Because the premise was this community will educate its kids, but will decide exactly how it gets done. So you've got, I don't know, is it $33 million for 1,400 or some odd students. Fundamentally, we've got a spending problem, and it all comes down to headcount. Every factor we've discussed, healthcare, insurance premiums, pension plans, is all headcount.
I think most of the people that, I voted for it, but I think most of the people that voted for it or against it, they were looking at what's the return. People, most of the people in town, I don't think were looking that I'm going to have control. They're looking, how much am I going to save? Is my taxes going to go down $1,000 a year? And that's what they were concerned about.
Who's the decision maker for the next year? That was the question. And then we can tell you how much you're going to save.
So I think that most people went into it
Well, there was
with a certain amount
there was
of
a
ignorance.
very effective disinformation campaign.
Oh, yeah.
I don't, frankly,
For sure.
I feel very reluctant to even say what I'm going to say because I don't mean to disparage the teachers union, but BS that came from the teachers union in the form of a card saying that our mill rate was going to go up $8, and this was just complete Tennessee BS disinformation campaign. And that's frankly what that coupled with the duplicitous threat from the school board not to take our high school students.
Oh, yeah.
Those
are the things that people needed to have good, solid information.
Well,
Good, solid information.
Unfortunately, I don't know of anybody that cares to take it back up and relitigate it.
No, probably.
This is
It's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate that it ended the way it did.
You know,
I can just tell you what a lot of people missed the point. It got voted down of 900 to 500, rounding numbers, 1,400 people voted. Huge turnout for a town meeting. The school budget lost by 16 votes. So how can the same people that were there to support, make sure we stay where we are, yet the same people voted 596 to 581, 596 no on the budget? How could you be out there and say, I don't want this, but I can't have this budget?
Yeah.
At the very same ballot.
That's why I say a lot of people went in there completely ignorant of the whole meaning of the thing.
So yes, you're right, you did a good job of scaling it. Which floors me because no town has built 2 schools. We've got $100,000 a year we pay. Charlestown is the only town in the 5 towns that has done a bond in the 50 years of the school for its own town. We pay for that. Volunteers built that school in North Charlestown. We paid for it. And so to come out and have people say Charlestown is going to decimate education is such a lie. Now, we did see the emails that came out from the state teachers union to the staff that they were putting the full force and might of the state teachers union behind defeating it. We saw those. I have the emails. So yes, we have been just like anybody now voting. You get all this junk in your mail and all the lies. I don't care what party you are. They're all lying about how bad the other guy is. Well, we got it done to us, and they did a very good job. And we just, when you say you didn't get the information you needed, because they were better liars.
I would entertain a motion to
You got
adjourn.
it. You got it.
No, it's, the reason I bring it up is, how do we fix that? We can't, if we're gonna get saddled with another, $4 million tab on from the school on our budget, we can't deduct $4 million from our town budget to try to balance that.
Did I get a second?
I didn't hear a second.
Yeah, Bob did.
No, he firsted it.
Oh,
We're all having too much fun. Come on.
I'm gonna follow suit.
second.
Oh, good. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you all for your time, and we will hopefully